All right, when we talk about living in Florida, you know that we do things a little bit differently if you've been watching for any amount of time. So far, things are looking pretty healthy here in Florida amid all the economic pressures that we're seeing all over the country. But what's interesting down here is we're seeing people out and about doing all the normal things. They're at baseball games, they're out boating, they're out dining, they're out shopping. In fact, you can't get into a grocery store any time of day without having the place packed. Now, there's no cashiers down here, very, very few. We have a lot of the machines running, but this is kind of what we're seeing as our sign of the times down here. There's just a lot of people still out doing a ton of things. Now, there are a lot of things that I'm finding out that are popping up that may change the way we do things in Florida going forward, and you might find some things that would affect your perception of what it would be like to live in Florida. We're getting after that next. Hey everybody, my name is Craig Cunha. I'm a real estate agent here in Southwest Florida, and if you're looking for a channel to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to live, play, eat, sleep, and buy real estate on the Gulf Coast, this is the channel for you. So go ahead and subscribe, hit the little bell to make sure you're notified every time, and go ahead and either go to ournextfloridahome.com to get your search started there, or use the new app that's out. It's also called Our Next Florida Home. You'll see the little logo here, QR code if you can scan it. This is an all-encompassing search that you can take on the go. It's not a app that we sell information to a third party, so you won't have a bunch of people calling you when you use this, and it's tied directly to the MLS, so you're going to get the most accurate, up-to-date information you could ask for. If you've got any questions, just like everyone else, you've got to call, text, or email, because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast. All right, as you know, we talk a lot about pros and cons of living in Florida. I like to tell you exactly how it is, tell you the truths that I know, the things that I hear, whether I think they're a little BS or whatever that looks like. But there's one thing that came up the other day when I was on Facebook. Somebody had posted a thought process about living in Florida, because there's one thing you won't have to worry about when you're living in Florida, and that's somebody in the backseat of your car waiting to get you because it's too damn hot. Yeah, that's a fact. We talk about all the time down here why you should be very attentive to things and goings on in your vehicle. But that's not one of them, obviously, because it truly does get very hot in there. I talk about the sunshades. There's warnings all the time on the news if you have kids about checking the back seat before getting out, not taking your pets, or leaving the car running if you do take your pets, because people down here will break the windows and let that animal out or that child out. It's just a fact. Things get super hot very quick in the vehicles down here. But once again, you're going to be safe from any kind of stalker sitting in that back seat. Here's something else that I found in my daily scrolling, and it was the fact that Florida really does do things differently, and we don't care. I mean, it's kind of obvious that we have our own style here, and people do some questionable things. You've heard all kinds of Florida man stories. Well, you know, there's lots of things that go on down here that you scratch your head and you have to think twice about what made them think this was okay. But that's just Florida. Now, before jumping into what's going on in the housing market, because we do that every time just to let you know exactly where we stand compared to these national stories, there's something super exciting happening, and I can't wait for this. Up in Port Charlotte, they have a new offering coming there that's going to allow you to get there by car, boat, and possibly even seaplane. We've talked about it previously briefly, but now we've got a little bit of an update, because this place, the Sunseeker Resort by Allegiant Airlines, is going to have 9 restaurants, 11 bars, 2 pools. I think it's 500 or 600 rooms, and they're not just rooms. You can get a 3-bedroom suite. So depending on how long you want to stay there, you're going to get harbor views if you choose or not. Most of the place has to, though, because there's water on both sides of the building. But this place is going to be stellar. They're talking about another 600 jobs coming to the area with this place as well. And it's slated now to be open May of 2023. So if you're interested in that, go to sunseekerresorts.com. You can actually book a room right now for next year. Check it out. If you've got any questions, it's on the website. They answer a lot of things there about what's going to happen, what you're going to be have available to you. There's even a golf course nearby that they will shuttle you to if golf is your thing. Now, as far as the housing market, Again, national stories are different than local stories. YouTube is different than Newsbreak, is different than CNBC. So I've said this before, be careful where you get your information, because the latest thing that the YouTubers are out there talking about is, look at all the inventory. It's crazy. You're going to have houses to pick from left and right. I went on my MLS and I'm showing a downward trend of inventory every single month, or the past 3 months leading up to this point. And there's been no crazy month where we've had a large spike anyway. So are we really seeing tons of inventory? Not like you'd think. There is some more inventory. There are some price decreases in the MLS, but as we said previously, that's because people overprice their stuff to begin with. There was a listing the other day, I couldn't even believe my eyes, because I sold a condo across the street from this place just a couple months ago. We were just shy of $200,000 on that condo, and this condo across the street, 200 square feet bigger, they have it on the market at over $500,000. That is an agent that has no business being in this business if they're listing that kind of property for that kind of price and giving that expectation to a seller. That's just obnoxious. So there's going to be people like that. That one, we can expect maybe a 200,000% pricing decrease when all is said and done. That's just way overdone. But that's what causes these price decreases to be there. That's what causes these false numbers to be there. So if you want the truth and what's really happening, yes, prices are adjusting down slowly. You'll see it with inventory from builders more than you'll see it from custom builders. I talked to a custom builder the other day over at Pinnacle, and the gentleman told me that they've got work for another 16 to 18 months, and they're not doing any pricing adjustments because the small ones they're getting with lumber, they're still so slight, and not knowing what the other things that they're going to need for the build will do, they're not able to do any kind of decreases. But once again, they don't do inventory homes. They don't have things waiting for somebody to come by. Some of the big guys like D.R. Hortons and Lennar, they're going to be able to do a little bit more of that than these custom guys. So keep that in mind. You're not going to see a bunch of money for the more exclusive homes, the higher priced homes, as you will in that lower price range, like in the 300s, 3 to 400. That's kind of where you're going to see some of that stuff going on. Now, when I show these inventory numbers of what's going on here, this is every city between North Fort Myers and Marco Island. So it's taking up the whole section of Lee County and Collier County. There's not a ton of listings, I'll give you that much, but the inventory is definitely not going up. So if you are really wanting to dig in, and if you're in a situation where you are going to be really looking for a home sometime soon, there are offerings there. You can get them below the list prices in some cases, but the really desirable ones, like it's been for the last year and a half, they leave quickly, and they can leave with multiple offers. Another fun fact as to why this is happening in our area, we are the #1 destination for people that make more than $200,000 a year to relocate to, at over 20,000. So when you take that many people that make that kind of money and want to come to the area, they can buy a pretty nice home for that kind of money. And not everybody has the same qualifications. So that was an interesting statistic to see how many of those people with that income come here, and they're either retiring, they could be remote workers, or they could be in an industry that's just anywhere that you go. Healthcare is one of them. So there is going to be competition still, not as much as there once was, but that's what's going on in the housing market right now. As far as rent goes, unfortunately, Fort Myers is also tabbed as the #1 city for rental increases year over year at 29%. Once again, we don't know where these numbers started. I can tell you that there's only 2 exceptions to the single family rentals in all of the area I named, from North Fort Myers down to Marco Island. The rent generally starts around $1,800. There were a couple that were just slightly below that. You'd have to weigh whether you want to live there or not. But $1,800, there's only a couple of them, then it jumps quickly into the low 2000s and escalates very quickly from there. That is for a single family home. Condos, there's a little bit more relief. It starts more towards the $1,500 a month, and then we'll give you a few dozen offerings until you hit the 2,000 mark. But keep in mind with a condo, you're sharing walls, it's a very different style of living, It could be multiple floors, it could be one floor, and they could have a bunch of rules about other restrictions such as pets, the age in which you are, what kind of vehicle. Some places won't allow motorcycles, so you have to keep in mind, if I've got a vehicle they won't allow, what's that look like for me? On top of that, you will at times have different expenses or access to different things that you wouldn't with a single family home. So 2 different types of living, 2 different price ranges, pretty much, but you have to weigh out what works best for you. And once again, it's a rental. You can have that changed on you at almost any time. Normally you're going to get an annual rental, and these were all annual rentals, by the way, no short term. But that landlord can come back to you next year when it's time to renew, and you could be looking at a couple $100s a month, because it's been happening to people up to this point, and there's no sign of it stopping. I actually have a buddy that's in the management side of rentals, and he has quite a few evictions coming up here in the next month. And when I say quite a few, we're talking upwards of 50. Those evictions are going to happen because these people were getting the government assistance. I mentioned in the previous video, they stopped the assistance. So now people no longer have that money. There's jobs out there, we can get the jobs, but they just may not be paying enough to pay for this rent. So this is going to be an ongoing problem with rentals. Just keep that in mind when you're deciding between buying or renting. Another thing to consider is if you're an investor and you're coming in and you want to buy a place, maybe 5 years ahead of your retirement, and you say, hey, I'm just going to rent it out as an Airbnb or VRBO. No, you're not. In all cases, that may not apply. Many of our areas are full of communities and associations. Fort Myers is one of them. You're going to find this on Fort Myers Beach is a whole other animal. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Cape Coral is very popular because of the fact that there are no HOAs as a general rule in the city. And there's a lot of water. There's a lot of water access. So if you have a pool on a home, it's on a canal in Cape Coral, the Gulf Access Canal, that is the most sought after. You'll probably get the highest dollar. If you go to Fort Myers and you're in a community, they're going to tell you how many times a year you can rent. And it's normally something like 2 or 4 times. The most you're going to see is 12 times. That means 30 days at a time. That's not an Airbnb. So you can do seasonally if they offer enough of them to fill that. But the Airbnbs are going to be very, very difficult. Keep that in mind also when you're looking at your home type. Homes versus condos. Condos will almost never allow for an Airbnb because, again, they have restrictions on how many times you can lease it out. That's what you have to consider when you are an investor. And if you're trying to go to Fort Myers Beach, it gets even more difficult because the single family homes, you can go street by street and have different rules. Literally, being on one street, go one south, they won't allow rentals. Go the next one down, they'll allow rentals. Why in the hell that happens? No idea. It's something that was set up down there. And when I was looking for some other clients, I found it to be a little ridiculous, but we definitely would have to dig in and find out what the regulations and rules are if you're looking in an area like Fort Myers Beach. Insurance increases, we've seen this happening. We've seen all kinds of insurance stuff going on, and there was a bill put in place that hopefully we'll start to see some relief on that. But there's a whole new problem that came up this week that affects your insurance if you really think about it. So we had a permit backup a few months ago. There was so much construction going on, and they changed over the system at the city, and they're having problems getting these permits pushed out. Well, the new problem is now we've got companies that put the storm protection up that have all the supply of the goods to make it happen, but they can't get the permit done. So now you've got these people that have no storm protection. We're in the middle of hurricane season with the strongest parts still yet to come, and they don't have storm protection. Worst part of that, if you don't have storm protection on every opening of your home, your insurance goes up. So with all the increases, on top of not having the proper protection, what do you think is going to happen to that insurance? Another thing to make sure that you have if you're considering living in Florida. Now the electric bills, all kinds of complaints. We know that FP&L raised the rates. They say it's because in order to make power, they need natural gas. Natural gas is something that has not adjusted in price. It's just going up and up. So their costs are high. They're passing the costs on to LCEC, who passes it on to the consumer. The only thing you can do as a consumer at this point is make modifications to your home or your habits. So if you have older windows on your home, change them if you can. I mean, the impact windows are super insulating, even if you get dual pane windows. Funny enough, here's another fun fact for you. Most homes in Southwest Florida do not have dual pane or impact windows. We never had them before. They were single pane windows. Some of them are still jalousie. That's the one that you take the crank and wind it. Yeah, that still exists. There's so much leakage of the air, and your air's having to run more. That's another thing. Air conditioning. Zach and Joey, you hear about them all the time. Zach told me about his new air conditioning unit he had to buy for his house. This thing has like 45 speeds, and it works based upon the humidity more so, and it knows when to go fast and slow, and it does all these adjustments. So he has his home at a higher temperature now and still is chilled. So modern efficiencies are always going to be the best way to go. So we talked about the windows, we talked about the AC. Make sure you have enough insulation up inside your attics, and do all those little things that you can to fix those efficiencies. Turn down the temperature on your water heater. People, some of them have it scalding up at 150 degrees. You're never going to need it that hot. So make the adjustment if you have to. Also, number of wash loads you do, how long you take showers for. All these things will play into your efficiencies. How long you're on the computer, on the television. All these things add up. If you have a pool, that's just part of it, man. That pump is going to suck a couple $100 a month right there. Anyway, make your adjustments where you can so that your electric bill isn't a big thorn in your backside. Now, you know we have bad drivers here, and it's not always bad drivers that cause the traffic, but we do have accidents often, and some places in particular see it very often. A high traffic area, so US 41, which you then add the complications of all the lights, but I-75. If you're somebody that's coming here and will commute to a job, do yourself a favor, get on the news every morning and find out what's the traffic doing? Where's the accident? Where do I need to make my adjustments so that my day's not screwed? Keep that in mind, though. If you're commuting, always check the news in the morning. I do Fox 4. Some people do the NBC 2, but there's enough options here for you to do that. Keep yourself aware. The other thing that we have changes of that affect that is school just started back, so the traffic patterns change hours in which they move. A lot of parents drop their kids off and pick them up, so it shifts those hours. Also, what's the other fun thing that happens in Florida? Snowbirds. When they come back, our traffic changes again. So just because it went well and you had a great time getting to work in the summertime, that doesn't mean it's happening when the snowbirds get here. For all of you moving here and asking about internet, we do have some very fast internet. Xfinity is probably the top option that we have here in the area, but CenturyLink just came out with Quantum, which is supposed to be a super fast fiber related kind of internet. Problem is, not all areas have fiber yet. So they even disclose it in the fine print. Look closely that this super fast speed that they're trying to sell you on their postcard, it may not apply to your area. So read the fine print before you order something, because you may get burned in the end. Now, lightning danger here is for real. We see home strikes, boat strikes, people strikes, beach strikes. They just happen everywhere. And there's a lot of fantastic photos out there as proof of that. But it's one of those things that you really have to pay attention to. If you see a storm coming, if you see the lightning, like the other day we were out on the boat, we saw the storm. As soon as the lightning started striking, we were off and gone. You don't want to play with it. You never know when it's going to hit. Just stay out of its way the best you can. Now, our summer storms are darn strong here, and sometimes it can feel like a tropical storm. I won't say hurricane, but we had one come through the other day that was super strong. Punta Gorda got the most of it. We had screens blown out up there, and there's some people that were posting about their horrible experience, like 48-mile-an-hour winds, and just things being thrown across the deck of their pool area, and things thrown in the pool because the wind was so strong. So it is serious. Our storms do get rather strong here in the summertime. And once again, if you're not a good driver in snow, you may not be a good driver in the kind of rain we get here. When it's a downpour, it's a downpour. You may not be able to see, so get off the road, pull over, make sure you put your flashers on, and if you can't handle it, at least let the others who can drive safely by. This was kind of wild. I was out fishing the other day, and we were right at the Boca Grande Pass, so that's where the Charlotte Harbor meets the Gulf of Mexico. And the current that was rolling through here, it was hitting these buoys. It looked like a river was running through there. And we were pushed miles within minutes. It was crazy how fast this thing was moving. And it just reminded me to let you know, if you're somebody that likes to swim out there, I'm not a particular fan of it because there's a lot of stuff in that water I may not want to be close to. Anyway, if you're one of those people, we talk about the rip currents here all the time. They can happen, and there's no telling where they're going to happen. And the kind of current you're seeing here is the kind of current that's going to be in a rip current. The only way to get out of that is to swim perpendicular to it, so that means away to the sides. So if it's trying to pull you out, you swim to the side, either left or right. Hopefully you don't get in that situation, but if you're a swimmer and you're going to be in the Gulf, this is real and it could happen to you. All right, so that's a little bit more about living in Florida, and this is just the way we do things. So if you want more information on what it's like to live in Florida or move to Florida, check out one of these other videos. And if you've got a specific question for me, you've got to call, text, or email, because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast.